Dear brothers and sisters, praise the Lord. It's time to read the Bible again. This week we are reading Genesis chapter 19. Chapter 18 is a very pleasant chapter. We saw the father of our faith, Abraham, his growth in his faith, and eventually he can provide for the Lord and two other angels as a friend. After an abundant feast and in their pleasant conversations, God revealed to them, first, a blessing of life, that is, Sarah will give birth to a son this time next year, and second, God will judge the wicked and sinful cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that brought in the interceding for Abraham for his nephew Lot. God even said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do?" That indicated to us that Abraham had a very close relationship with the Lord. And now chapter 19, focus on Lot. This chapter is a very difficult chapter for me. I don't like to read it. There are many things recorded in this chapter are very distressing. Many immoral and filthy things recorded in this chapter. But we need to remember, Bible is a book of God's words. It's not according to our likeness, but according to his righteousness and holiness, and according to his mercy and love. Therefore, we still need to read this chapter and be aware not to that the things happen to Lot happen to us, and without knowing it. Verse 1. The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening. In chapter 18, we read that the two angels left Abraham and went towards Sodom, while God remained there. Abraham then remained standing before the Lord and had a deep and long conversation with the Lord. Or you could say that they had a heavenly negotiation. Abraham interceded for Sodom based on God's righteousness and justice. Eventually, they reached at a point, if there were 10 righteous in the city, then God will not destroy the city. Just as Abraham was negotiating with the Lord, these two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening. And the verse continued to say, "And Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground." Lot had followed the Lord while he was with Abraham. Therefore, he had some spiritual discernment. He saw these two angels and knew they were not common people. The way he reacted were very similar to how Abraham reacted in chapter 18. He got up and to meet with them. He bowed down with his face to the ground. And the difference was that Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent, but Lot was sitting in the gate to the city of Sodom. At Lot's time, the city gate was a public place where everybody gathered together. It's also a place where they judge things if there were any disagreements or accusations against each other. Therefore, if you can sit in the city gate, it represented that you are somebody. You are honored in this city. Normally, the elders of the city would be the ones who sit in the city gate. Abraham lived in a tent. Lot seemingly was more achieved, lived in a large city, Sodom, and be honored to sit by the gate. And Lot seemed to enjoy his status. Therefore, he still sat at the city gate in the evening. Verse 2, "My Lord," he said, "please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night, and then go on your way early in the morning." What he said was also very similar to what Abraham said in chapter 18. He saw two noble persons king. He bowed down to them and warmly received them, invited them to stay with him at his house, and to wash their feet so they can be refreshed from the tiring journey. No, they answered, we will spend the night in the street all night. The angel's response here is different from the one they gave to Abraham. Abraham suggested to them that he'll brought some water to wash their feet so they can rest under the tree, and to get them something to eat so they can be refreshed and then go on their way. They accepted and said to Abraham, do as you say. To Lot's suggestions, they did not accept. They answered, we will abide in the street all night. From the following verses, we know that Sodom was a place of lawlessness. It was not a friendly place for strangers, and most of all, it's a morally corrupted and very sinful city. Maybe Lot knew about this, so he urged those two angels to stay at his house. These two angels were sent by God to check out the city of Sodom, and they had the authority to destroy the city if the outcry about them were true. Verse 3, and he urged them greatly, and they turned in unto him and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. Abraham gave a hearty hospitality to God and his two angels. He prepared unleavened bread, a choice and tender calf, and stood nearby to serve them, so they could enjoy the meal and had a very good fellowship with Abraham and Sarah later on. In comparison, Lot did not nearly provide as much. He only gave them some unleavened bread. This was one of the basic offerings in the Old Testament. It typified the pure and tender humanity of Jesus Christ. And Lot did not offer them any calf, no rich enjoyment of Christ, because he lacked of the subjective experience of Christ, lack of the personal enjoyment of Christ, so his offering was also insufficient. We mentioned it before, a Christian's consecration to the Lord is based on his personal experiences of the Lord and the revelations he received from the Lord. New experience will bring in new revelation, and new revelation will bring in new consecration to the Lord. Consecration is about change of ownership from us to the Lord. And the first step in our consecration is the change of our position, and then change of our existence, and then change of our goals and labors, and eventually the change of our constitution. When Lot accompanied Abraham entered into the land of Canaan, they experienced Shechem and knew that God was his mighty shoulder. Also experienced between Bethel and Ai, and saw the glorious of the house of God. But when Abraham settled in Hebron and lived in the constant fellowships with the Lord, Lot did not follow. Instead, he chose for himself the plains of Jordan and gradually moved into Sodom. They started from an idol worship place, Ur of Chaldeans, and eventually Lot chose to live in a wicked and sinful city of Sodom. Lot lost his rightful position. Therefore, he could not experience a deeper level of consecration to the Lord. And also because of so, his Christian faith was stagnant and did not grow. We'll stop here for a while and see what Lot had experienced so far and what was his journey look like. First, we need to have a proper evaluation of Lot and see how his Bible say about him. In 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 6 2:9, Peter said, "If God condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them to ashes and made them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly, and if he rescued Lot, a righteous man who was distressed by the filthy lives of lawless men, for that righteous man living among them day after day was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. If this is so, then the Lord knows how to rescue godly men from trials and to hold the unrighteous for the day of judgment." According to Peter's argument, Lot was a righteous man. Therefore, we can say that he was a failed righteous man. He lived in a sinful city and saw all the filthy and lawless things happen around him. His soul was tormented, but he couldn't do anything about it, or couldn't even leave the sinful city. In Genesis 19, in the following verses, we'll read about the ending of his life. It's very pitiful. But we have to understand Peter's evaluation of him is that he is a righteous man. Then why did he fail? Actually, we can learn an important lesson from Lot. A lot of times we gradually, without knowing, we can also become like Lot. As of now, we can see quite a few special characteristics from Lot. First, his followings were all passive followings. Bible didn't seem to record anything that would show us that Lot was actively followed the Lord in his life. From the start, the whole families lived in Ur of Chaldean. He followed his grandfather Terah, left Ur and into Haran. Then Terah died. He followed his uncle Abram, left Haran, into the land of Canaan. In Canaan, they lived in Shechem, in between Bethel and Ai, even followed Abram down to Egypt because of the famine in the land. He had been followed somewhat passively. When Abram was strong in his faith, he followed. When Abram failed in his faith, he still followed. He did not seem to want to get involved and follow the Lord actively. Second, when the person who do not want to actively follow the Lord, he will not have the appearance of the Lord. This was the second special mark about Lot. In Genesis, the records show us there were so many times God appeared to Abraham. Sometimes Abraham was strong in his faith, sometimes he was weak and failed miserably, but God still appeared to him because he was a person who wanted God and actively followed the Lord. If you are always passive about God or anything about God, God did not appear to you, so you have some personal experience with the Lord. Naturally, you will not have God's appearance. In the New Testament, Bible tells us that knock and it shall be opened unto you. Seek and you shall find. If you don't knock and you don't seek, naturally the door will not open to you and you will not see any vision. Third, because of your passive follow and because there's no God's appearances, then his relationship with the Lord will remain at a state that's merely saved. When the temptations came, he will value the outward material blessings far more than the relationship he can have with the Lord. Because Lot's relationship with the Lord was connected through Abraham, when they had too much material possessions for them both to stay at the same place, Lot chose the fertile plains of Jordan and parted company with Abraham. After he left Abraham, Lot was going downhill in his faith, eventually reached his next mark. Fourth, he was lost. He lived in a sinful world. When Abraham lived in Hebron, in a constant fellowship with the Lord. His growth in life was going upwards step by step, and Lot lived in Sodom, enjoyed the happiness the sinful city could bring him. Fifth, even under this kind of condition, God was still merciful to him. He was captured during the battle of the 4 kings against the 5 kings, and was rescued by Abraham and out of the captivity. This should be a great warning sign to him, but he could not take the warning from the Lord. If he had a normal relationship with the Lord after being rescued by Abraham, he would have a proper reflection and chose to return and follow Abraham. But he did not, and he chose to return to Sodom. A person who lived in the wicked city eventually will not be able to receive any warning from the Lord. 6. Not only so, because he did not follow the Lord for a period of time, because he did follow the Lord for a period of time, so his behaviors and his deeds were still a lot better than those people who live in Sodom. Lot used this to get the status he liked in the city, to be able to sit by the city gate and seemingly be respected by them. He maybe looked like he had achieved something for himself in the world. He actually lost the proper testimony a Christian should have. 7th, Lot had followed the Lord before, but he eventually enjoyed the world, enjoyed the status the world gave him. So he became someone who merely saved, but with no testimony in his living. Dear brothers and sisters, are there some marks that also exist on us, on you? The reasons that Lot failed. First, he always followed passively. Second, he had no appearances from the Lord. Third, he valued the outward material blessings a lot more than the relationship he could have with the Lord. Fourth, he was lost in the sinful world. Fifth, he did not take the warning from the Lord. Sixth, he lost the proper testimony as a Christian, but enjoyed his worldly status. Seventh, he became merely a saved Christian, but had no testimony in his living. May God help us so we can be warned and not to be like Lot. Let's pray. Lord, from Abraham and Lot, we saw 2 totally different kinds of Christians. I pray that you'll help us, give us a keen spirit. When we are going downhill in our faith, we can be warned. Please help us to learn from the footsteps of Abraham's first faith journey, and we'll be able to follow you faithfully. Bless my life today. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen.